Will you pray with me? May the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. The thing that strikes me most about the reading at the beginning of the book of Joshua is this repeated refrain: be strong and of good courage, be strong and of very good courage, be strong and of good courage. I think sometimes as Christians, this notion of courage is something that we don't focus on very much, and yet it's found throughout the Bible as an encouragement to us. And courage isn't the same as fearlessness. So if we're fearless, we're unafraid, we don't have any fear. Courage is different. Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And so all of us have fears in our lives, and when we overcome them, then that's called courage. There are lots of examples in the Bible where people are courageous. So Joshua and Caleb, when they came across the giants, they came back to Moses and they said, we can defeat them, which was different to the other spies that were sent out into the promised land. When they came back, the other 10 spies, they said, oh, they're huge people and we can't defeat them. Whereas Joshua and Caleb focused more on how amazing this promised land was, filled with milk and honey. That's not to say that Joshua and Caleb weren't afraid. They probably were, but they were trusting God, for God to fulfill on God's promises. And the story of David and Goliath is another one of courage. So David was a little shepherd boy, but he was outraged that Goliath was having such power over the people of Israel, and so he wasn't standing for that, and so he stood up to that giant. And there's other times in the New Testament, for instance, Peter and John are persecuted in Acts chapters 3 and 4. Because they are preaching about Jesus Christ and they're told to stop. But they do not stop. They carry on going because they really believe that God has told them to tell the truth, to tell people about Jesus Christ. So how does that relate to our lives today? Where do we need to show courage? I think in terms of evangelism, in terms of telling people the hope that is within us, effectively telling the truth about our faith, that often takes courage. And I don't think evangelism is only for some people, it's for all people. All of us have this perhaps knowledge and love of God. And wouldn't it be great if those we loved and those that we came across also had that opportunity to know about God? And yet so often we're quiet because we're afraid. We're afraid of people's reactions. We don't want people to feel uncomfortable or awkward. And so we stay silent. Another area of courage is speaking honestly to each other. So how often do we have a misunderstanding or a disagreement, or how often are we cross with somebody, and rather than talking to the person that we're cross with or we've had a misunderstanding with, we might talk to other people, and that breaks our friendships, that breaks our unity, and it's not loving. So why would we do it? Well, I think the answer is because we're afraid. We find it difficult. We need courage to talk to people when there's been a difficulty or disagreement. Other ways that we need to be courageous sometimes is in challenging ourselves to perhaps take the next step in some area. Perhaps it's taking the next step in our faith. Perhaps it is sort of volunteering to doing something that is outside of our comfort zone. And yet perhaps we feel God is giving us a bit of a nudge in that direction. All of these things take courage, and I believe without courage our faith can actually become quite stagnant, and things that become stagnant ultimately die. So I do believe that courage is something that we need to try and practice on a daily basis. So I pray for you, and I pray for me, and I pray for all of us that we would be strong and of good courage. Amen.